Hey everyone, nice to see some people hopping on here. Great. My name is Christy Bennett. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the Director of Development and Personnel at ACM. And I started the Film Fest several years back. And I think in the very first one, I think I had like 18 students create films, and almost all of them were stop motion. So that's the basis of my expertise in this. I didn't go to film school for it or anything. It's just I've become very familiar with using the app that we're going to use today. Um, and I would encourage you, if you're at home and you have all your stuff, even if you're not using your device today to actually make the film using the app, try to make just like little characters. So if you're familiar with stop motion, then you're probably familiar with like the Lego movie. And Legos are great because you can move them little by little by little. And stop motion is just an animation that instead of being a series of photos that you're changing little by little, it's one image basically that you're adjusting, or one set of figures that you're adjusting. So sometimes they do that with clay for like claymation or Legos. But what I have found is easiest and gives you kind of the most possibilities of creative things that you can do is to just do a two-dimensional drawing. So a totally flat drawing. So I would encourage you right at the start here, if you want to kind of at least do some part of this along with, it doesn't have to be your final film project, but just to get a little bit of a more of an idea of how to do it. And you might find that you have questions along the way. And since we're live on Zoom, you can ask me those like in the moment. So I would encourage you to take some paper and a pen or whatever you have handy and draw a character, just like whoever you want to make a movie about or whatever you want to make a movie about. It can be anything. Today I'm going to be using some little characters that I made that are kind of collaged characters. So you can cut something out of a magazine, you can print something off of the computer and then piece it together in a different way. Or you can just do a drawing. Some of the coolest stuff I've seen on stop motion for these film festivals is just like really basic drawings. They aren't always like the best artist in the world, but it ends up looking really cool and stylized when they take their own drawing. So the thing to consider most about your character once you've created it and cut it out completely, you want to get rid of all of the like white area around it, is what parts do you want to move? Because what we'll do with the stop motion in the 2D is we will take those parts that we want to move and we'll cut them and make them separate so that we can move them little by little in our stop motion animation. And this app, there's two versions of it. There's a free version and then you can pay for the full version. I think it's like $5 for the full version. I think it's totally worth it, but it's also totally not, you can do a lot with just the free version too. So don't feel like you have to get that. So I'll start by just kind of, the setup is like kind of the most time consuming part of this. And I'll also emphasize beforehand that I've done this through the years in tons of not ideal circumstances, week after week with students just like in 10-minute intervals. We had different lighting every week. We were in a different room every week. And they still turned out pretty cool. So don't feel like it has to be perfect or you have to have the exact setup that I have to make it work well. Let's see, there was a question in the chat. Let me ask. You don't have to know what you're going to do for your film. I would encourage you today to just make a character, any character. Think of it as totally separate for what you're going to do for your film because you're just kind of getting the idea of how to make a stop motion film. Like I made a little short film. I didn't even write any music for it. I'll show you in just a few minutes an example of like what we're going to create today. Just to give you an idea. As I say, consider this like an exercise rather than we're creating the film today. It's more just to get you used to this app that's kind of, it's easy and very user-friendly, but like anything else, it takes a little practice. So to give you an idea, I'm set up at home right now, and this is way more elaborate of a setup than I've done at the school before, but it's all very DIY. So I have a few lights. When you're doing stop motion, most people that are really into, let me see if I can get this set up the way that you can see everything. let's see. Sorry for anyone who gets motion sick. So I have a few lights set up here. And you know what? Let me grab. Okay, so you can kind of see this a little better, I think. I think. So I've got just a little desk lamp. And then I happen to have like a couple of these little LED lights. Maybe you do too from doing stuff on your computer. And then I've got these little characters that I'll give you a better look at later. But the LED lights are nice because they recommend the non-flickering aspect of them. But the desk lamp that I'm using, and I've just got like a tissue that I use some like chip clips to, and a clothespin to get kind of fixed on there and soften the light. It's kind of a DIY soft box. And then the hardest part of the 2D I have found is having a tripod that works to hold your device parallel to the surface that you're making it on. So this is from an artist named Dina Amin. I'll share the video with you later, but she has like a whole series of DIY tripods. So this is rubber bands on a box lid, and then I'm using just like a candle to weight down the end of the iPad. So this is all pretty important. This is all important because the most important thing and the thing that makes your video look cleanest is keeping everything as consistent as possible. So the lighting being consistent is really helpful, and keeping your device really stationary is really helpful. Again, totally not necessary. So if you're just holding it or you're having a sibling hold it while you move the parts of your characters, that works too. That's how I did it for years, and they still looked fine. So I've made some graphics to show you, or some photos to show you what we're going to be working with today. These are going to be the stars of the film. This owl guy doesn't have any moving parts except for these little bits right here. So these are going to be his eyelids. And I've got fully closed eye and I've got a half closed eye. And then the little bumblebee, I ended up, after I started putting it in the video last night, I realized it would be nice for him to have wings. So I just cut out some little paper wings. So these are just like collage pieces that I threw together from some magazine clippings. The other thing I wanted to mention, this is another hack that I actually won't be using today because I don't have the right headphones for it. But if you're using a phone or an iPad and you have these headphones with the wire, the volume knob on these, if you click in the middle, it'll take a picture for you in the app, which is really helpful when you're trying to keep your device stable and stationary, because you don't have to push the button and take a chance of like bumping the device. So that's a really nice hack, is just plug those headphones in and then use the middle clicker. This stuff on the right here is, again, one of those totally not necessary, but I have found to be kind of helpful. It's just like a sticky putty, and it helps you hold certain pieces in place. I'm going to use it on the back of that owl because it's a bigger piece and because he's going to be likely to move around. I actually even might add it to the back of the foam board that I'm using as my backdrop today because it kind of slides around and that's a little tricky. And then this thing is just like one of those like cheap clip-on lights for your phone, but that can be a really good way to just get like a little better lighting. But if you don't have any of those lights or anything, again, you can still totally make a really great film without all of that. And then the rubber bands were just what I used on the box lid to hold the iPad in place. Okay, I think that's all of the boring stuff. I'm going to switch over to my iPad and I'm going to show you what we're kind of going to walk through today. And maybe that'll give you a little idea of what you can do with your character that you made today. So let me jump on Zoom. And again, if you've got questions, just like Luca did, hop in there and ask the question on the chat. I'm going to try and jump in there. Okay, so I'm now in 3 places. Fantastic. And I'm going to share my screen so that you can see. Okay, I have to change one thing, sorry. There we go. You know, I haven't used Zoom enough in the last couple of years to know how it works. So let's see, we're starting a screen broadcast. So this way you should be able to, I tested it out last night, see everything that I do on my iPad. So I'm just going to the stop motion app and I'm gonna go back to the home window so you can see the video I made last night. And it's gonna tell me a whole bunch of tips. It loves to tell you tips. Okay, so this is the video that I made last night. Can someone in the chat? Could you hear any sound on that?
Yeah, I could hear sound on that.
Okay, great, thank you. So super simple. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you can see each of the individual pictures. So it's a whole bunch of pictures. But the cool part about this, if we were drawing an animation, those would all be separate drawings that we had to create. With stop motion, it's just a click of a picture. So it's way quicker than regular animation. So just to walk you through this, and if you have suggestions for what you would like to see the little owl guy do or whatever, let me know. But I'm gonna go back and we're gonna make a brand new film. So on the main screen, I'm just clicking new movie. I'm gonna get rid of that because I don't think I need it. There we go. And I'm gonna get it set up. So once you have your iPad in place, then you can kind of play around with, yeah, if you need, I don't know if that's helpful or not. Let's see, can you still see the, yeah, there, I'm looking straight at the animation. So you can kind of move your iPad and get it in the place that you want, and then you can adjust. So you'll notice if I do this, I can see that this side gets out of the screen and I have that black line there because of the table that it's sitting on. So I want to make sure that that's all white so that you just see the background. Another thing that's really important to keep in mind with stop motion, because you can just make things appear out of nowhere, there's a tendency to want to do that. But it really is kind of best if everybody makes an entrance. Like when you're watching a movie or a TV show, people generally walk into the scene. They don't start out in the scene. So I can see that this bee is already in there and I don't want him in there yet.
Can I note something?
Say that again?
Can I note something?
Sure.
You could also have a character like sitting somewhere before they like get up and start doing something. That's what it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up a really good point too. It's if I were doing this for the film fest right now, I would want to already know beforehand what my characters were going to do. So I'd want to have like a plan of attack and then I would even storyboard it. So ask your teacher. We have some storyboards available and I'll send a link out after this too. That's just a good way of like kind of having in mind what you're going to do before you get in front of this. It doesn't mean that you have to stick with it entirely. You can always like get inspired to do something different and mix it up a little bit. But at least you have a plan of attack when you start it out. It'll make it go a lot faster. So we're just going to do a real quick version of this. So I want to see when this guy comes in the scene, and I don't want him in my first picture. I took that picture, but now there's a little bit in it. And then I'm going to start, I want him to roll into the scene. I think it's kind of cute because he's running. So if you look at the bottom, and I've got a little putty behind him so that I can stick him to this board. If you look at the bottom, you can see the series of pictures that are happening. And maybe in this next one, I can start moving his way down. The other thing I'll point out is on the left side of the screen, this is called an onion skin. And if it starts responding to my finger, you should be able to see. So the onion skin in here is a pretty cool feature to this app because it shows you what happened in the last scene. This is a grid also, which is helpful. It won't be in your final film. It just kind of helps you set it up. There we go. There's the onion skin. So this is showing 5 photos back. So I can see the whole course, the whole path that the little owl guy has taken so far. And that's really helpful, especially if you're like wanting to line up, like if you bumped it or something and you want to get it in the exact place that you did before, had him before. I'm getting him a little lower. And then I think I'm going to let him do a little spin and rustle around. And notice every time I touch this board, I'm moving him a little bit, or I'm moving the board a little bit. That's something to be wary of because it can make it look a little less clean in the final thing. And once he's upright, then I'm going to start making his eyes do a thing. All right, so I've got him upright. I'm going to take one picture of him with his eyes open there. And maybe I'll take an extra picture just so he kind of like pauses, but you can also do that later in the project. And now I'm going to take those teeny tiny eyelids that I made earlier, and I'm going to start having him close his eyes. So I'll start with it a little higher on his eyelid so you can still see his eye. So I'll get 2 shots out of the half lid. And I think kind of the more you can think of gradual, the better with these. Although I've seen some where people like move way faster than I think it makes sense. And it ended up looking really cool. So bigger moves mean faster movement. That it controls the speed of your stop motion. So now I'm just kind of trying to counteract the amount of coffee I've had today and get those a little lower. Also, I might mention too, if you're doing like arms and legs, make sure that your arms and legs are always touching the body. It's easy to get caught up in what you're doing and like lose track of that. And it's really disturbing. So unless that's what you're going for, if you're doing a zombie movie or something, like by all means. But if you want people to have kind of normal movement, usually we stay connected to our limbs. So now I've got the full lid. And because this is just a series of photos, you won't see all this like in between stuff of me like lining it up. So we've got a sleepy owl. Oops, and it looks like I bumped him just a little bit. So notice now how I can use the onion skin to like kind of line it back up. Man, I bumped him a lot while I was doing that. I really should have made my backdrop more stable. There we go, that's pretty good. All right, so we got our sleepy owl in the middle. And now I want the bee to make his entrance. So while the owl's asleep, I want the bee to enter. Oops, and you can tell if you look over here, you can see there's a little black showing. There's ways to fix that after the fact. It's not that big of a deal, so I'm not gonna worry about it right now. So I'm gonna let those little feet start showing up in this picture. And the owl's still sleeping. And I'm gonna move the bee down and kind of get his wings lined up. So I made 2 separate wings so that I could have one behind him and one in front of him. And if I was thinking, I probably would have made those wings contrast with the backdrop a little better so you could see them. So I'm gonna move him so it looks like he's flying when he comes in. And I think in this next one, I'm gonna move the owl just a little bit so it looks like he's like rustling around a little bit. If you've got 2 characters and they're both moving somewhere, you wanna make sure that you move both characters in every photo because we don't tend to just totally wait turns with things. So I haven't done much with wings. Not really sure what's gonna look best with that, but we'll just move them a little as we go and see how it turns out. And I might move the owl again so he looks like he's snoring or something. When we do sound effects later, maybe we'll decide to add snores. Those wings. So after each little movement, I'm just, oops, see, and there my little weight went down and I can use that onion skin to kind of get things lined up again. And then move the owl a little bit, move the bee a little bit, adjust his wings. Up for that. And now as the bee's close, I think I want the owl to open one eye. But I think I'll have him peek first. So I'll go back to one of those little half lids. And again, I want to use that onion skin to kind of make sure I've got it lined up a little better. We've been adjusting a lot, I suppose. So. And now he's totally shocked, so I'm going to have him go immediately to open eyes after that. And I don't want to forget, I think I might have forgotten to move the bee in the last one, but we'll move him again. Now, also while I'm doing this, I'm going to take one picture with my hand in it, because that happens a lot. And I'll show you in a minute how you can edit that so that it's out of there. So now I want the owl to roll out of there. So you can see with the onion skin that I can tell that my hand is in it, but it's possible you could do that and not notice, especially if you didn't have, like I think this onion skin's got, it looks like it has 5 frames. So that means it's showing 5 pictures. Oh, and I haven't been moving the bee, but I think we can just do like little movements with the bee. He's not chasing the owl. He's just watching the owl. As he heads out of the shot. I move that bee again. I kind of moved a lot in that move, but that's okay. The other thing too is with these series of photos, you can always set stuff back up and you can add photos in the middle if you're like, oh, I really wish I had moved him a little more gradually in that. You can go back to a spot in the middle and add more photos to make it more gradual. Very forgiving, which is nice. It's easy to make mistakes with this stuff. Owl's gone. I want the bee to move to the middle. I wanted his antennas. Went down a little bit. I'm going to pick him up and move him. And again, because it's a series of photos, we're not going to see any of this in the final product. This is just what you have to do to get to the next photo. And I can see that was a pretty big move, but I think it'll work out okay. He's a fast bee. I'll do just one more shot, and then we'll do some like post-editing stuff. Bee as the victor. There we go. Okay, so now we've got our whole thing. I'm going to take my iPad, get rid of the onion skin. Let's see. Sorry, too many screens right now. And there's a nice frozen one of my nose. Excellent. All right, so if we go back to the beginning, let's watch what we've got so far. So he rolls in, closes his eyes, falls asleep. Bee comes in, he rolls out, bee comes to the middle. So we can adjust the speed of that. This is telling us how many frames. I'll go back so you can see what I just did there. This little, it's like a little gear. And then it's showing us right now that we're at 5 frames per second. Really fancy animations use like way higher frame rate than that. I think it's like 12 is the standard. Don't quote me on that. Again, I didn't go to school for this. But if we wanted to slow all of that down, we could go down to 3 frames and see what that looks like. Let's use that feature. I'll take this out so we can just see it. So that's pretty slow. Let's see what it looks like way faster. Go back to the thing. I'm gonna go all the way up. Let's do 30. Let's see what that looks like. So fast. So find a kind of happy middle ground there. I'm gonna go with like, we'll say 12. Let's see what that looks like. That actually still seems kind of fast to me. So I'm going to slow it down even more. I'm going to say 8. All right, that's pretty good. Now I noticed that my hand is in there, so I want to fix that. So you can scroll through and it's pretty easy to find the one. Clearly that's the one with my hand. If I tap on that image, I can now delete that picture. And ta-da, it's gone. No more. The other thing that you can do, and this is applicable with the Pro version, you can use a green screen, which I have to say, in my experience, we've done it quite a bit, and it is so tedious, and it's way more important to get your lighting perfect with the green screen, because if it isn't, it'll be like really unclear and fuzzy in the background, and then you have to go back and fix it. And there's totally ways to fix it, but it's just easier to not mess with the green screen. So if you wanted to fix something, the other thing to keep in mind is if you took a photo, now mind you, my lighting is not perfectly consistent throughout this whole thing, so there might be darker spots, but the general idea would be this. You can take your blank background and say I wanted to erase that hand. I thought it was going to be fine. I'm going to go ahead and paste this image in front of it, in front of the image that I want to erase from. And then when I tap on that, I can do erase. And now it's going to erase to whatever the back image was. Now you can see that it's not matching exactly with what the lighting is here, but in general, it's just going to erase to what you were at. So you can add it back if you like look at it and you're like, oh, that's really not the best way to get rid of this. Actually don't know what that's all about. That's a new thing, new masking frame. I don't know about that one. They've added some new features since last I used this, but you can erase to the last frame. That's the main thing to keep in mind. When you're erasing stuff, you're just erasing back to the last one. Great. So I'm just going to get rid of this that I just pasted in there, and I'm going to get rid of this that I pasted in there. And I just want to real quick go over the fun stuff, which is adding your music and adding sound effects to it. So sound effects are best when you like really spend some time thinking about what's going to draw attention to the subject that you want to have the attention in that moment, in that scene. So in this, I think the most important part is when that bee comes in, because that's like what moves the plot, right? The bee is what makes the owl go, ooh, I want to get out of here. So I'm going to start with that. And in the very first image that I can see those bee feet, I'm going to, so this is, we don't really know when we see this image. You're probably not even noticing the bee there, and you certainly don't know that it's a bee yet. So that's the right scene. I want to announce this bee's entrance with a sound effect. So I already found a sound effect. If you Google free blah 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 sound effect, like in this case I said free bee sound effect, you can usually find an MP3 somewhere that you can download and then import into the app. So I'll show you how I did that too. So if you've got your, so I'm going to go to files. In the files here, I have, where's the bee sound? Bee noise. So I'm going to select that bee noise, and I'm going to do the little corner thing. And mind you, this is all for Mac, so I'm sorry I don't have a alternative route. This is just what I've always used. And you can share it to the app. So we're going to slide through our options and find the stop motion app, and it'll say audio file imported. So now we have that bee sound as an option. And when you click on that image where I want to add that audio, I just need to find where it put it. And as I recall, that was a little tricky last night, actually. So if you make recordings, which say you're recording your piano part or your flute part or whatever, for the music that you wrote for this, you can find, if you save it to the device that you're using the app on, you can save it to recordings. And when you go to add it to the animation, this is where you would find it, is in the recordings section there. I think I maybe had to I'm trying to remember what I did last night. Sorry. Um, oh, yeah. So I did add and then I went to file because I couldn't find it. It wasn't in the place that it normally had been. And that's what added the B sound. So now let's hear what that looks like. So that worked out pretty well. The B sound lasted for the whole, oops,
I
B
thought that
sound
was
lasted for
real
the
bee.
whole rest of the film. So
I,
I'm going to leave that as it is. It seemed like it worked the way I wanted it to.
I
I
got
think
scared.
also, ooh, you got a question?
I got scared. I thought that was a real bee.
Fear not. That was not a real bee. That was just a bee sound effect. But that's how you know you got the right sound effect, right? You did the same thing that owl is going to do and you got ready to get out of there. So when my owl goes to sleep, I think it'd be funny if we show that he's like snoring. So maybe we could find a snore sound. Actually, I'm just going to see if it's in there because if it's not in there, we won't add it. But audio, there's built-in sound effects with this. Not a ton, but they've got some good basics, especially for like animation stuff. I don't think I see any snoring. We'll skip that for now, but that's something that I would think like if I want to draw attention to the fact that this owl is sleeping, which might not be readily obvious just by having those little yellow circles over his eyes, then that could be a good way to indicate that the owl is sleeping. But I would say be really strategic with your sound effects. Use them to draw attention to certain things rather than just as a like it's so fun to add sound effects to things that it's easy to want to just like keep throwing them on things even and like the sillier the better, the ones that make the least amount of sense seem really fun, but I think it kind of gets old real fast. So use it as a tool to like enhance something in your film and to draw attention to something in your film. So I also want to add, we'll say I had a song that I wrote and it's in here, which I don't right now, but I'm going to add, they have these little songs. Don't use these, write your own, obviously, but because you can write something way cooler. But I don't know what Royal Banana is, but we're just going to throw that in there and see what it sounds like. All right, so one more time through this. You remembered it wasn't a real bee that time, right? Wasn't really
Yeah, I did, and the music did sound pretty good on that.
It made it friendlier, right? If I'd put scary music here, let's show that actually. So I want to delete this. I'm like, I don't like that music. I'm going to add some different music. I want this to be a scary movie. I think they have scary movie. Where was that? Evil March. That sounds scary. What else we got in here? Sneaky Adventure. Villainous Treachery. Let's try Villainous Treachery and see what it sounds like. That's a totally different film, right? Totally different. We went from like a comedy to a scary movie or a suspenseful movie. So when you're creating your soundtrack, keep those things in mind. Like you have total control over the mood of your film.
The
The
second
other, what's that?
the second one with the scary music sounded actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. It like totally changed what I had in mind. And it's kind of a funny contrast to this silly looking owl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I want to show you one other thing. So this is, since we're doing a series of photos, something else that you can do to make your film a little bit longer, you can copy and paste in here real easily. So I'm going to go to this very first photo and I'm going to select it and then I'm going to slide through all the way to him being center. And I'm going to click copy and then I'm going to go to the next frame and I'm going to paste it. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select everything that I just copied and pasted. And when I get to the one where he's upright, I'm going to click that again and I'm going to do reverse. So now he's going to come in and go out and come in and go out. Ooh, that happened a little too quick, didn't it? So I know I want to get rid of, oh yeah, we want him to come back in again. He can't just appear. So we got to copy and paste again. So I'm going to find this one and I'm going to paste on there. And that's going to show him rolling back in. Okay, so let's try that again. So now we just like almost doubled the length of our film, just like that. So think about strategic ways that you could do that too. That can be really fun and kind of cool. So any questions? That's kind of the gist of how to use this app.
No.
Anybody? Did anybody make anything that they want to share? Did you make any characters or characters that you're like, I don't know what parts I should move on that character? No? Any questions about like lights or putty?
Yeah, what lighting do you recommend?
I know the general rule of thumb is to have light coming from three sources. Don't fret too much about for sure having three sources. If you have LED lights, just because a lot of people have them now, um, use those because the thing about a regular light bulb is because of the circuitry, the way it works, it's actually like kind of flickering. So when you take photos, sometimes they'll be dark and sometimes they'll be light. And the LED lights don't do that. They're totally consistent light through the whole thing. So if you have the option of doing LED lights, great. If you don't, I mean, I remember one year we made one and we were just using natural light by the windows in the school. And it ended up looking really cool because they were using construction paper characters and the light was coming in at such an angle that it created these really cool shadows. So don't worry too much about the light. As I say, if you watch, like, if you guys, I'm going to share a link with about the Dina Amin, who's that artist in Egypt. All of her stuff is really clever, and I guess it's really difficult to get supplies in Egypt. So she does DIY everything, which is part of what I really like about her stuff. But when she's telling you how to make things, she will tell you that the lighting is like totally the most important thing. And if you're creating a professional level film that's a stop motion, it is. But for our stuff, just get a couple lights. You can use a desk lamp, that'll work great. Let's see, what if in our movie we need a shadow? That's where you get to play around. So you set up your device on the tripod and then you can just move your lights around. So that's what I did when I was setting up today. In fact, I wasn't totally happy with because I couldn't remember exactly what Dina Amin had said. I know there's like a softbox light above and then you do one on either side to balance out the shadows. But if you want a shadow, then you think about where the light source is coming from and so your figure is going to be like blocking the light essentially. So you move your light accordingly. So if you want a big shadow behind it, you want that light on the opposite side of the figure so that it'll block the light just in those spots where you want the shadow. Does that make sense? But you can play with it basically. Basically move your lights around until it looks the way that you want. And if they're desk lamps or even better, some of my stuff is all kind of wired, but like these little guys, you can move around wherever and clip onto things and stuff. Then you really have a lot of freedom for what you're doing with the lighting. With backdrops, I just used white foam board, but get creative. Like you can make you get to make the set on this because it's two-dimensional. You can draw it, you can use a map, you can use whatever you want, you know. If you want to have your favorite actor in your film with stop motion, you can do that. You want Benedict Cumberbatch in your film? Find a photo of Benedict Cumberbatch and put his head on a body that you created. And then if you want him to talk, find a picture of him with his mouth open and then go back and forth between the one with his mouth closed and the one with his mouth open. And now you're showing Benedict Cumberbatch talking in your film. He can talk about how you're the greatest filmmaker ever. Done. Interesting. I will say, if you're using figures, one year a student had like dolls for her characters. And keep in mind that you don't want your hands to be in the film. So you would have to have a way to prop them up and hold them up vertically. That's part of why I recommend the 2D thing, because you don't have to prop anything up. You can just move it really easily and manipulate it without worrying about gravity getting in the way. That's also why Legos are like kind of a go-to.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what if you like want to make a 3D film?
You mean 3D as in like using like Legos or?
Yeah, using Legos.
So, as I say, with the 3D, the main thing to keep in mind is obviously 3D is actually a little easier in the tripod department because most people have a tripod for their device that will hold it perpendicular to the ground or to the table or whatever. So it makes that easier, but make sure that you're using something that you can manipulate. So like if you're using clay figures, you're gonna want wire in the like their arms and legs and stuff so that you can move it little by little. And you want everything to be able to stand on its own. If it doesn't stand on its own, it's gonna be really frustrating to work with.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else? I'm really excited to see your films. Thanks for joining me today on this.
Okay.
Okay, cool. All right, well, if there's no other questions, keep an eye out. We'll send out an email. There was a great workshop last week that was all about writing for string instruments. And because you can write music and we're going to have some recording sessions to record that music, you can write for other instruments than your own this year, and we can make it happen. Um, it's a really cool video to check out because there's all kinds of things I didn't know about string instruments and articulation and all the cool fun things that they can do on those particular instruments. So I'm going to share a link. You guys will get an email with a link to this because it's being recorded, and you'll get a link to that one because it was recorded. And then I'll have some other links in there to like the DIY tripods and all of that sort of thing. Anything that could be helpful.
Yeah,
All right.
okay. I
What's
play
that?
the guitar and the piano.
Nice. Well,
And
man, you could even record your own. You could record yourself playing two different parts.
and I'm learning flute.
Wow. You're going to be like a one-person band. That's awesome. Yeah, you'll have lots of possibilities.
Thanks.
And if you play all those instruments, you'll be extra great at writing for all of those instruments because it's much easier if you understand the instrument.
Okay.
Cool. Well, if there's no other questions, enjoy the rest of your weekend and keep an eye out for an email with all of this stuff. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was fun to make a little film with you guys. I'll see you later.
See ya.